Well, this should be interesting. Hey everyone, this is Sarcastic Horse. I'm back. Anxiety is under control, my essential job is keeping me busy, but I still haven't forgotten about all of you. So let's begin this sarcastic summary of Steven Universe Future, episodes 11 through 16. Though at this point I should really just name the place poorly describing Steven Universe. But hey, tell me what you think in the comments section. For now, play the intro. In dreams, Peridot uses Steven's unconscious body to make videos. That came out wrong. Story begins with a brief nightmare sequence about everyone in Steven's life moving on without him. But then of course, when things get interesting, the child star has to wake up. Then to make the whole mini-series better, Best Girl Peridot shows up. She's there to watch TV with Steven.
The reboot of the classic Great Northern teen drama?
Wait, did he say reboot? They don't like the reboot. They moan about how it's no good, how it's just awful. It just completely murdered their childhood. Just take anything anyone ever said about Teen Titans Go and insert it here. Power plot, Steven is able to send his dreams onto the TV, so Master Plan Peridot wants to use him to dream and create their own version of the reboot. Ambitious, I like it. Too bad it's just an excuse for the show to talk about the show.
Just can't get into Rodrigo, can you?
He's so infuriatingly passive.
Hey!
They decide to spice things up by adding a foil for Steven's stand-in Rodrigo. I remember when they did that in this show. Oh wait. Steven goes to bed, but things go downhill fast when his aunts pop in to dream shame him. Has a problem, Steven wakes up to find the Peridot is ecstatic and ignoring his issues. Several failed playthroughs later, and the elephant in the room is so obvious, even Peridot notices. But desperate to replay his greatest hit, Steven won't let up. Giving it another go, Steven accidentally pulls off Inception. Begging for Peridot to stay, we get to the heart of the matter.
Something to fix together. The cluster, the diamonds, or Spinel. I don't think I know how to be a friend without something to fix.
Waking up in bed with Peridot, she tells him it's okay, and that they don't need to fix anything. They can just hang out, you know, like normal people. Bismuth casual. Steven and Connie do it in roller skates. Oh, and Bismuth and Pearl are gonna force into a double date. Steven is driving the car, doing his best to ignore the couple undoing their clothes in the back seat. At least Pearl isn't singing about being thirsty for his mom anymore.
Camshaft is the place to bring your wreck.
Revenge sex Bismuth is all about it, even going to a crappy roller rink to get it. But what she didn't know is that she has competition.
This is Khadijah, Jaime, and Brandish. They're just a few of my human friends.
Hi. Did y'all meet at the same orgy or did y'all meet separately? The monogamous couple breaks off to go skate, only for the boy in pink to get cock-blocked by Connie's other friends. Now being forced to hang out with some more nerds, homeschooled Steven remembers he can't talk to normal people.
So what grade are you in, Steven?
Grade? 16.
The thanks you get for saving the universe. The epic fails continue as the kid can't skate. Meanwhile, the romantic chemistry train is going full steam ahead, till swinger Pearl breaks off to get herself a senior citizen, leaving Bismuth with the new age hippies. But then she goes over to Steven to give him tissues to cry into.
Maybe later.
Or for blue balls. They talk about how neither of them can seal the deal or deal with their crushes in a group scenario. Going back in for round 2, Steven plays the pathetic card, which works, getting him a quickie fusion. Bismuth parties with the old heads, and the nerds don't question fusion. Wingman Steven throws Bismuth a bone with Pearl's favorite song. Nailed it. Together forever. Steven's life is a mess, so he almost ruins someone else's. Anxious that his girl is leaving for college, future house husband Steven is freaking out about being in a long-distance relationship, talking to the only functional relationship in the show, forgetting the couple is made up of morons. One walk through the woods later, Steven gives up on his life and decides he just wants to be Stevani forever, which married the first girl she ever kissed, Ruby, fully supports. Wanting a sure thing, Steven runs to the world's worst fortune teller, whose advice? YOLO. Picking the wedding cake before the proposal, Steven is convinced this will work, because TV has told him it would. Putting on his fanciest clothes and his sandals, he serenades his lady during her 15-minute break between SAT and ACT hell. They enjoy one of the beach city's famous pink sunsets. Okay, this doesn't seem like it will work though.
Something very important that I want to say to you today.
Never mind, he has a guitar, and it's super effective. The 16-year-old pops the question, despite being too broke to buy an actual ring. Not a fool, Connie thinks it's too early to settle for her backup husband. Try again when you're both 45. Big oof, Steven realizes what a bonehead move that was, so he lays down to marinate on that fat L. Several hours later, the relationship metaphor shows up. Always around after the fact, never before.
I love being together, but they each have their own individual lives.
Since when? Where is all this non-Steven character development happening? Like, tell me now. Growing pains. Find out Greg is anti-vax, and being a child protagonist is traumatizing. Who knew? Well, everyone that's ever watched Venture Brothers.
So the action man, because he's a full-on psycho, pistol whips him into the ground like a tent pole.
God, I love that show. Back to Future, though. Episode begins with why should they be happy Steven being mad at a gay dog proposal. Lying in bed all day, Steven is down with a bad case of bitchitis. And growing pains. Dear old dad has ditched Steven to go on tour, is probably doing acid again.
Hey, Dad, how's it going?
Bitch, don't tell me what to do!
Daddy's a little busy at the moment, so bear your problem, Steven. Doesn't have anyone to talk to. Growing a thing is still a problem though, and the only non-idiot in the show, Connie, sees that Steven needs help. Going to the only adult in this town, Connie's mom. The good doctor takes a look at Steven. We find out Steven's never been to a real doctor before.
Regular doctor?
I guess you? I've never been to the doctor before.
You're 16 years old and you've never been to the doctor?
Well, I've heard enough. Call Cobra Bubbles in on this mess. They run some more tests before making it to the x-rays, where we find out that all those years of bad slapstick have taken their toll on healing factor Steven. Dr. Mom figures out that after years of stress, trauma, and a bunch of other things that weren't a problem in the main show, Steven now sees every problem as world-ending. And we all know how Steven reacts to world-ending problems.
And death and love and birth and peace and war on the planet Earth.
Yep, that's his reaction. In the present, Steven is turning into a Titan. This has absolutely nothing to do with his failed proposal, or it would if Steven would stop blaming himself for one moment. Steven screams, Daddy answers, nice one, Connie, and finally, he has someone to talk to. They could have Steven go to therapy after all this, but I think we all know now that Greg doesn't believe in medicine. Dad, I think I need therapy. Doctor and therapists are for suckers. Let's try some prayer beads and a healing crystal. Oh, you're that kind of hippie. Mr. Universe. Greg screwed Steven out of a normal life, Greg's parents are still alive, and apparently these abusive parents don't get a clapback redemption. Peak life decisions Greg tries to cheer up his son, reflecting on how great his life was being a homeless teen, and recommends his son does the same. Hitting the road, looking like a drug dealer, we finally get back to the story of how Greg picked the name Universe. By breaking into an old couple's home, Greg tries to find something to steal, while his accomplice wants to leave a note to apologize. Finding a bunch of letters, he realizes this is his grandparents' house, and he's really impressed by his dad's past, who hates everything that he did back then. Finding his box of special stuff, they leave. Turns out Greg took the name from a song. So the teen runaway who, and let's be sure I get all this down, failed at being a rock star, mooched off his friends, lost his wife, raised his son while being homeless, never let his kid attend school or go to the doctor, let 3 space frogs, who between them have more baggage than a goddamn airport, mentally scar his son on a weekly basis. And now, he's telling his son to do the same things that he did.
Well, anything sounds dumb when you say it like that.
Can we go back to Connie's mom now? She seemed like she had her life together. Not taking the news well, it all clicks in Steven's head that his dad made some mistakes raising him. Crashing the car, Greg tries to turn this all into a positive, when all Steven really wants to hear is,
that really sucks.
So, Steven has no one left to talk to thanks to poor decisions, bad advice, and an inability to communicate. So now, all he has left is anime. Fragments. Steven goes full Dragon Ball and commits murder. So the Crystal Gems, after Steven nearly killed Greg, decide that this is where they step in and demand to know what's going on. On the bright side, his tantrums can now break time. Running away from home and without any options, he still picks the worst one. If anime was a person, Jasper doesn't want anything to do with Steven or his touchy-feely nonsense. Jasper has confidence though, and Steven could really use a lot of that. So he begs for some training, which she gives, for another chance to fight. We then get the how to be a Dragon Ball character crash course. Step 1, training. 2, repeating the same attack constantly. 3, have your mentor nearly kill you. 4, eating meat. 5, having huge muscles. And the most important thing, if you want to be relevant, you gotta have big hair. Feeling like he's in control of his power, Steven challenges fight sexual Jasper to a rematch. It's pretty intense. Steven's giving it the old Goku try and really feeling that power. Jasper is pulling a Vegeta and doesn't realize she's out of her league. Big finish happens. Huh. How dare you? It's Steven Universe. She's not gonna stay dead. So desperate Steven puts all of Jasper's shards in with all the diamond juices. She bows before his almighty power, and Steven realizes he's become his mother. Alright, now let's go into my real opinion / review of these episodes. And there's a lot to unpack. For me, these episodes are good. They don't impress, but I can see the quality and the intent of what they're trying to do. Future takes a page out of Venture Brothers' book and decides to give real consequences to being a child protagonist who grew up nearly dying every week. This is a bold move because it retroactively makes you look at the earlier seasons in a much darker light. To be frank, this creative choice, for as much praise this season, the way it handles trauma and anxiety, I don't find it that engaging. I too have read the nightmare fuel section on TV tropes. I've already thought about how weird and messed up Steven's living situation is, but I just assumed, like most cartoons, it's one of those things you suspend your disbelief for so the plot can continue. But I believe the show, again, falls into the same trap as the original series by making Steven the only character whose life is getting re-examined. I think the whole cast could have benefited from seeing their lives and how they've changed or moved on. We get small glimpses of how characters have evolved. Ruby and Sapphire are actually able to be separate for more than 2 minutes, but they've already changed, and there's no opportunity to see them self-reflect. This is why I think Volleyball is the best episode of Future, because it has Pearl re-examine her relationship with Rose yet again, and in the context of other people that knew her. I really enjoyed In Dreams because we see Peridot and Steven together again. Peridot is my favorite character. The story has a lot of fun visual gags, and the realistic use of a 30-something-year-old Steven playing a teen in a teen drama did make me smirk. But even though the conclusion was really touching, with the two not fixing anything and just hang out as friends, in the context of the larger story, this episode feels like it never happened. By the next episode, Steven is still unsure of himself, and the peace of mind that he had while hanging out with Peridot is gone. Peridot should be more aware than anyone of Steven's fragile state of mind. But in these collection of episodes, she is nowhere to be found. Almost like the show needs to have Steven be isolated as much as possible for this plot to happen. The show wrote Greg out of the story, but Peridot should still be around to help Steven. This has the knock-on effect of having Steven's mental collapse feeling incredibly forced. The show may want to treat Steven's problems realistically, but in doing so, it invites the question of realistic solutions, and demands that we should expect the other characters to act in a believable manner, which this show is not giving me. What this show is giving me is a ship I took no small delight in mocking in this video. Bismuth and Pearl. I think it's okay. I can see the chemistry between them, but if I had my choice, I'd rather have seen Bismuth try to date one of the other uncorrupted gems, because it almost feels like the process of elimination on who Bismuth would be shipped with. Garnet is married to herself, so she's out. Amethyst wasn't around during the Gem War, so they don't have much of a rapport, leaving little old Pearl to be part of yet another love triangle, with the third part being humanity in general. I liked Pearl's enthusiasm for human relationships, which is a huge development for her, being that she was the crystal gem most biased against humans, and the gag with the toilet paper could not have come out at a better time. I also liked Steven's arc in this episode. As we see, he struggles with being a part of Connie's life and his awkwardness with normal people. But the use of Stevani to resolve the conflict has me torn, and it all comes down to interpretation. Either this moment is meant to show the strength of Steven and Connie's bond, complementing each other and helping one another navigate life, which all the visual elements in this scene tell me yes, that is the point, which I think is a bad conclusion for this story. Here's my take, and the more thematically consistent way to view this scene when taking into account both Bismuth Casual and Together Forever. Steven's use of fusion, rather than highlighting the strengths of their relationship, actually highlights Steven's weaknesses instead. Steven is unable to properly find a place for himself in Connie's life. She is going off to college and is meeting new people that Steven struggles to relate to. Rather than this episode giving Steven what he needs, which is to learn how to interact with other people and to assess how his and Connie's relationship will move forward, instead he gets what he wants, and is able to monopolize Connie through fusion, relying on how they used to connect in the past, which will become ineffective once she isn't in the room with him. This interpretation, I think, is more fitting as it creates a natural conclusion for Steven in the next episode. That fusion/marriage will solve all of his problems. If this is how the scene is supposed to be taken, I applaud the writers. But the overly positive and romantic undertones diminish the potential impact of that conclusion. We could have had it so that after fusion, Connie is once more pulled away with her other friends and Steven is left alone. Then his focus on fusion as a crutch for his relationship troubles could be treated with a lot more weight. My thoughts on Together Forever is that it's good. Predictable, but good. This proposal is completely in character for Steven. My only WTF moment comes when Garnet, who never willingly unfuses in the original series, turns around and tells Steven,
Ruby and Sapphire love being together, but they each have their own individual lives.
Garnet is highly hypocritical here, and I wish the show would address how codependent these two are and the loss of individuality that comes with fusion. But the show is just too enamored with Garnet and fusion to ever have that conversation. So, pivotal character development continues to happen off screen, and the show is telling us to do as they say and to ignore what they show. I already stated my thoughts on growing pains in the beginning. Steven never going to a doctor is as ridiculous as it sounds, and this begins the Greg was secretly a neglectful dad dissection that feels as unnecessary as it is disconcerting. But I'm saving this episode for my final review, so I'll eventually come back to this. Mr. Universe I have somewhat similar opinion of. I like the parallels it draws between Greg running away from his abusive family and Pink Diamond, but for the show to then say that Greg was so in love with Steven's gemness that he thought his son didn't need school seems so out of character for someone who has been characterized as only wanting the best for his son. And I get it. Steven Universe is from Steven's point of view, and when we're young, we don't notice how our parents may screw up raising us. But Greg comes out of this episode looking so bad. And at the end, when he tries to spin Steven's outburst, which led him to wreck the car, as a positive, yeah, Greg isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, but he's not that stupid. Nor is he so enamored with his own teen rebellion that he can't recognize the warning signs in Steven's behavior. They had a whole episode about Greg stepping up and acting like an adult to prove it. So for them to backpedal like this is just weird. Finally, we come to Fragments. Now, I've made a lot of jokes about Jasper being an anime character, and I am happy that the show continues to support this view. This episode was a lot of fun. I'm always down for an anime reference or battle. In the episode, Jasper isn't necessarily wrong that Steven needs to step up and take control of his powers, but her idea about friends being a weakness and the sole focus of life is fighting is clearly wrong, and I'm glad the show reinforces that. The scene where we see Steven hold the shattered remains of Jasper was magnificent. Didn't convince me for a second that she was gonna stay dead, but it does a really good job of conveying how distraught Steven was in that moment. And Jasper bowing to Steven at the end was really good as he realizes that he has become his mother. Now in conclusion, I like these episodes. They do a lot right, but the plot still feels artificially inflated to me. It's telling the story that it wants to tell really well, but it's going to tell that story when it ignores the larger cast. This keeps me from fully getting into the story as much as I would like, because I keep questioning why this plot is even happening half the time. Steven needs therapy. There, I just solved all of future for you. If this story wants to get real, that's fine, but that means they also have to address why they aren't using real-world solutions. But hey, finale just came out, so we'll see if they stuck the landing. Now I should have my final Steven Universe Sarcastic summary out next week. I'll be compiling all my summaries of Future into one big video with some final thoughts on the miniseries as a whole. I'll also announce the next show I'll be tackling at the end of that video. So tune in to find out more. Click the buttons down below, help the channel grow. Patreon is a great way to support my channel. That's all for now. Peace out, Sarcastic fans, and you all stay honest.